A very good afternoon, everyone. Um, Let us pray a 1 minute silence to express respect and remembrance for the departed souls who have lost their lives in the horrific terror attack in Pahalgaon, Kashmir, a day before yesterday. May their soul rest in peace. Thanks, everyone. This is Ms. Indrakshi Bhattacharya from the Banking, Financial Services and Insurance Board of the Institute of Cost Accountants of India. Welcome everyone to the webinar on the topic Analyzing the Business Model and Need for ERM, Designing Risk Strategy, Risk Culture and Governance. And we have with us as speaker today Sri Swakshar Basu. He is an Associate Vice President at Ravantage Asia Pacific, a Blackstone company. We welcome our speaker. We have with us our chairman, sir, CMA Chittaranjan Chattopadhyay, sir. CMA Partho Chaudhary, sir. We welcome CMA Partho Chaudhary, sir. He is the former CGM RBI and advisor of our BFSI board. We welcome our HOD and secretary and additional director, the BFSI board, CMA Dibyendu Roy. And we also welcome our other BFSI team members. So just before we start, we are playing the Institute's anthem first, and then we will start our session.
Include sound quality. Include sound quality. That's all.
Just to inform that our chairman sir will join shortly. So now I would request CMA Partho Chaudhary sir, who is the former CGM RBI and advisor of our BFSI board, to give his address, please. Sir, please.
Thank you very much, Indrakshi. Namaskar to everybody. The respected chairman, Mr. Chittaranjan Chattopadhyay, whenever he joins. Sri S. Basu, Associate Vice President at Revantage Asia Pacific, senior officials from BSIB, and the participant this webinar. First of all, I must place on record that I consider it a great privilege for me to get this opportunity to address the participants in this very important webinar on analysis of business model in the light of ERM, risk culture, risk control, and governance. It is indeed a very interesting and complicated topic in which our respected speaker will be deliberating on that. Before we start this webinar, I want to just highlight a few of my. Before we start this webinar, I am just interested in highlighting a few of my personal views on this. We are all aware that enterprise risk management, ERM, is a framework for managing risk at the organizational level, that is at the apex level. Being it a very broad concept, it can encompass concern ranging from ensuring employee safety, securing sensitive data so that the regional statutory regulations can be met, and also help in stopping financial frauds. Broadly, as we all know, this can be categorized into two very basic categorization. One is the internal risk and the external risk. And this internal risk can comprise of as diverse as equipment malfunction, employee attrition, and the external can be natural disaster, change of political regime, etc. We are all aware of all this. So the moot point here is that what is considered risk, it varies from one enterprise to another, depending on various factors and variables. We are very happy to have with us Sri Basu, a senior official from Advantage Asia Pacific, and this firm provides high quality services related to ERM and risk management practices across different continents. Their worldwide presence helps them to build unique perspective of ERM for different type of enterprises situated in different geographical locations. I'm sure that Sri Basu will give us glimpses of that global perspective of ERM and risk management cultures and tools from different enterprises from different jurisdictions. As our country is getting more and more integrated with the world in different areas of economic developments, it is very important for us, the members of this institute, to be aware that building a dynamic risk culture and risk management architecture at the enterprise level and also at the national level is of paramount importance. I'm sure that the participant of this webinar will be immensely benefited from his addresses and the issues he will be dealing with. And I also thank BFSIB for arranging such a seminar for the benefit of our members. Thank you very much for your time. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, sir. So now I would welcome our chairman, sir, CMA Chitranjan Chattopadhyay, sir. So I would request sir to give his address, sir, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Indakshi. Today I am in Delhi actually. Sorry for I have not been able to join in time, for which I beg to be excused. Very respected speaker as of today, Mr. Sakshar Basu, and of our advisor, CMA Partha Chaudhary, who is also happened to be one of the very senior central banker, and my colleague, CMA Dibyendu Roy, HOD of BFSI board, and all the attendees who are here, who have come here to in this particular the very it's a very hot days at Delhi, also in Kolkata, so far my knowledge goes. But our activity continues, and today the session which has been we are going to present before you a personality. Sakshar Basu is a very knowledgeable personality, having his educations abroad, and he is already working with his all expertise, and I pray to God for his excellent career in this particular venture. And today's session, definitely the analysis of business model and this need for ERM, what is there, and how this risk strategy, risk culture, risk governance, how it should be designed. So this will all be discussed today itself in these sessions. Friends, as you know, our institute BFSI board is already in very much, and we have got very much connectivity with the bankers and other insurance business, insurance. I mean, those who are clients. We have always been learning from them that how your members are equipped with the ERM, because ERM is going to be very important, as already it is there. But I know that this is a only subject where you can really pitch into the BFSI sector in a big manner. Our CMAs are doing exceedingly good job. Many CMAs are doing their good job in this sector applying ERM. But today's session will be definitely a scope to learn from a very Doyen who has already been in the job, and he's applying his knowledge internationally. He's applying his knowledge. So this understanding your business model, need for ERM, all will be discussed by him without wasting much more time, because we have to learn from him only. And I request Mr. Basu to be with us, because his father is very much associated with us. Today we had a business, internal audit assurance standard board. Mr. Basu was all throughout the program in our meeting. So Mr. Basu, today son and father both are with us today. Just 2 hours back I was with him. Now you are with us. I wish you all the best, and let our members be benefited out of your deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. So I had the privilege of now introducing our speaker, Mr. Sakshar Basu.
Hi.
Yeah. Hi, sir. Sir, he is a master's in professional accounting in the University of Queensland, Brisbane. He is a Bachelor of Commerce at the St. Xavier's College, Kolkata. He is a dynamic risk manager and audit professional with extensive years of experience in risk management, internal controls, and audit. And currently, he's spearheading the enterprise risk management and facilitating business continuity management at Revantage Asia Pacific, a Blackstone company with an increased focus on ensuring internal compliance and risk reduction in APAC region, that is Asia Pacific region. He recently, as a member of Parima, he was invited as a panel speaker to share insights on ERM and moving from spreadsheets to GRC platforms. He currently he is the Associate Vice President, Revantage Asia Pacific, a Blackstone company, and he presently resides in Singapore. We welcome you, sir. It's a huge honor and privilege for us to have you with us. So now requesting Sakshar Basu, sir, to give his presentation, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the warm introduction. Firstly, before I start, my apologies for not being able to connect on the Teams for a while. I was trying, so there were some technical issues. So I do apologize for that. Now, before I start, I must thank to the ICMI, the BFSI board, and special thanks to CMA Bibhuti Bhushan Nayak, the president of ICMI. CMA Srinivasa Prasad, the Vice President of the ICMI, and CMA Chittaranjan Chattopadhyay, Chairman of the BFSI Board ICMI. So without further ado, risk is not always the most interesting and exciting topic to kind of discuss. So I'll try my best to make it more meaningful today in my honest and humble attempt. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen, and and then we can go through the presentation. Just bear with me while I bring that up. Okay. Can someone just confirm that they can see my see the screen?
Not yet.
Is it on now?
No, not yet. Now it's okay. Please
Okay,
make
perfect.
it full screen. Yes.
Yes.
Go to the slide mode.
Yes. Hopefully you can see it now.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just give me a minute. Just give me a minute. All right, I am back. Hopefully you can see me.
We have a finance company as well. We're offering as the entity want to offer this program. Pan India business for their set. They also want to collaborate with us for the care that they have 20 locations. They have 20 locations to have their own hospital. For the rest of the locations, they want our infrastructure also. This is what they have told us, and they want to participate for the finance company. We are already there.
See, when you are going, you have many training partners.
Sorry, can I? I'm going to proceed. I'm hoping that everyone can see me and the slides. So without
Yes,
further
sir,
ado,
please do.
yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, I think we're going to talk about broadly. We're going to talk broadly on four areas today, starting from the aligning the organization model, the real need for ERM. Why do we need that? Designing the risk strategy, and then finally we'll talk about the culture and the governance. Now, as I go through my slides, a few housekeeping rules that please feel free to ask me any questions during my presentation, or we can park the questions towards the end of it. And another thing is, I think there are some polling questions that I had flagged out. So as and when the time comes, I'll request Mr. Dibyendu Roy to kindly run those polls and share those results, since I'm unable to see it on my side. So we can have a small discussion on those results. Hope these are clear. So without further ado, I'll move on. All right. So what you see is, how do we analyze our organizational model, right? So in terms of, I think the first thing before, as risk managers, the first thing before we jump into kind of fixing the problems and finding out what really the risks are out there, we need to be mindful of the structure that the company operates in. So essentially talking about the business model that's there, understanding what is the governance structure, what the legal entity structure looks like, and then what are the various lines of defense that are existing today in the organization. I think those are the basic ground rules that one needs to take cognizance of before moving into doing action straight away on the risk management. I think next comes the fact that on the internal analysis part, where we're talking about to effectively understand how an organization operates. You need, as risk managers, we need to gather relevant information like reports and documents of the organization at the group level. That would be a good starting point to learn about the org structure, the process, and the performance. So essentially, that's what goes into the internal analysis. Some key internal resources that you can use as starting points, I think we all should be aware of, are the annual reports, the internal audit reports, and any other key management reports that goes in. I think in addition, we have to engage with our stakeholders to understand the technical documents that come across. We can conduct the interviews at this stage to get familiarization, understanding, and then building those relationships over time. That would really be in this phase of getting to know a feel of the business model that the company operates in. Next up would be the external analysis. So on the external side, I think the risk manager needs to be cognizant of the external environment that the business operates in, and prioritizing that information based on the relevance to analyze the vulnerabilities that's there. So I think for example, I think I'm from the real estate industry as of now, so I can say that from a real estate standpoint, we have as a risk management professional, I'm likely to pay more close attention to the regulatory changes the events or the changes that focus on the regulatory environment and the requirements and relating to compliance of the Building Safety Act, as an example. And I think one very common, this is an acronym I've used, PESTEL analysis. PESTEL stands for political, environment, social, technology, legal, and environment. I think this is basically, in a summary, it tells you as a risk manager, as an enterprise risk manager, which is the theme today, ERM. You have to think from a 360, from an all-angle perspective of the risk protection and the downside and how it can impact the P&L and generally the business model of the company. On the benchmarking side, I think that's very useful to have, because if you do a useful benchmarking exercise, you kind of know where you are standing in the class, right? So you know whether you're the best in class or you're kind of falling behind, and therefore you use that to identify your strengths and your weaknesses. So and next up on this, with the final piece of that would be the organizational resilience. So I think when I say this, it's basically as a risk manager, we need to understand what are the existing resilient protocols that are there, the processes that are very much existing. If there's a single point of failure, what's your backup? And that brings us to a more deep diving conversation on the business continuity aspect and a crisis response plan around the business. With that, I'll move into the next one. So next up is an environmental scan, right? So on this one, really, we are talking about having an understanding. So this is essentially when you're setting the stage. It's right at the beginning, after you've understood the organizational model and you've done your initial bits of analysis. This is really building on from the first slide, is to understand who are my stakeholders. So I have to understand the entire value chain, everyone around it, whether it's we all know the stakeholders. If you guys are from been running an MNC, we all know that, okay, your shareholders, your board of directors, your customers, your vendors, and all of them. But more importantly, my regulators, don't forget about them. And you've got the other third party and the fourth party. If you're in the logistics space, then it'll be a 3PL and a 4PL, so fourth party logistics and 3-party logistics environment. So we need to be cognizant of everyone in that stakeholder. So essentially mapping out the stakeholders in a map. Followed by that would be really focusing on the internal environment. I think in the internal environment, this is where we focus on the operational risks, because that's really what it transpires into. Now, while doing that, we have to review the governance frameworks, the existing policies, and understanding the org culture. Now, how do you determine the organization culture? From what I have seen, I think some of the common methods that we use are having really an employee, like an employee survey. What is the internal audit talking about in terms of findings and the governance? In today's day and age, some of the social media reviews about your organization. What do people who are working there and those who have left, what do they say about your company? So I think those are really critical elements that one can see and kind of funnel through, and when you're looking at analyzing the internal environment. Next up on that would be, I think the more critical part is the external environment, because obviously we don't do business internally, right? So we have to look at the external environment, and that affects your strategic plans for the near term as well as for the current year. I think when you're looking at that, you have to research on some of the cultural and the social aspects. We all know what's happening with the tariffs, so the macroeconomic impacts, the regulatory changes that's happening out there, whether it's from a taxation perspective or just from purely in the space of let's say you're talking about some accounting standard changes or really ESG-based regulatory changes, and how does it affect me, and how is another competitor kind of doing in the same space? And how you see this is when you understand this whole landscape, you're kind of trying to do one simple thing. You're trying to see the interconnectedness between the external and the internal. And then that will, as a risk manager, that really sets me up for success because I'm able to understand, having an accurate understanding of what really we are operating in, which space are we operating in. Now, in terms of organization culture, I think this point here I have broken down into 4 pillars, and starting from core values to the behaviors and validation, and finally the biasness. I think it's no secret that if we have to achieve success, we have to look at the organizational, the mission, right? And what is the value? What are the value statements? What is real purpose that the management, the senior leadership actually are setting in? Next comes the behavioral aspects. I think as on the behavior side, I think it's quite critical to understand that what is your perception versus what's happening on the ground. I think that's a critical aspect, because when you're looking at things, not necessarily what you envisioned, not really is not what really is happening on the ground. And very similar to that is the tone at the top. I think that is very, very critical on this, because if you really do not have the tone at the top, you have to go and get that buy-in from whoever you need to, from the board members or the senior leadership team, to make sure that the aspect and the culture is driven from there. Now, in terms of the validation, so this is when I say the triangulation of the information that you have across the channels, and you kind of jot down the disconnections and the alignments. Now, when I say this, is essentially saying what is leadership saying versus what's my team practice, and you then see that okay, there's some clear disconnects. If there's a certain risk angle that my senior leadership is saying, like let's say one of the senior head function heads are saying, but actually I've got no or very little appetite for this, then there's a clear disconnect between what's perceived and versus what's really acted on. And the last bit on this is the biasness. I think this can really change the course of decision making. And there are 3 things I mentioned here about confirmation bias and the framing bias and the tactical bias. I think when I see this, confirmation bias is something which you seek what supports you, and then you ignore what doesn't. So that's basically from that perspective. Framing is when people when people are making decisions based on the way information is presented to them as opposed to the facts. I think we often see this in when you're doing it in a marketing in a marketing campaign or in an event where you have this framing biases come in. In terms of information bias, I think tactical bias in a way is an information bias in a way is a part of tactical bias, and type of bias that occurs when decisions or judgments are influenced by the quality or the quantity of the information rather than its relevance or the usefulness of it. So it can actually lead to very big problems. It can lead to overcomplications, inefficient resource allocations, and then a failure to really act promptly. So biasness is something which can really, should be avoided at all times, but it can set us as a risk manager, it can set ourselves for failure. So one has to be really, really careful with the biases that are in play. Now, in terms of this slide, this is an interesting one. I was thinking of how to word this, because essentially as risk managers, I think, at least from my experience, I think how I see this is that we as risk managers often don't play an active, proactive role when the strategy of the company is being set. I mean, those who do, that's great, because then your company is really in a very advanced maturity stage in the risk management maturity cycle. But we have to be at the front. So we have to literally be there at the strategy setting. We need to know what the 5-year, the near term, and the short term plans are. And then, we need, like, for example, if you're launching a new product, example I've given here, or you're entering into a new market, the risk team needs to be there, the part of an opinion, and just to make sure that the decisions that are being made on that on the table, the options, the scenarios are all at play, and may the best option win. But that's where really you set your risk sort of management right up there as a line to oversight. And our job is to kind of challenge some of those assumptions without being argumentative about it. But obviously, when the scenarios are there, we need to challenge those assumptions. What this leads then to is really a good organizational resilience, because you know that you're involved at the strategy setting. You have challenged the assumptions. You're able to then kind of move from a reactive to a more proactive approach. In the sense of resilience, what it truly means is, as a risk manager, I'll be satisfied because I'm minimizing the downside of that, and then I'm helping leadership making some better informed decisions. So resilience actually encompasses, in a way, two things. One is the operational resilience, which is the traditional way of absorbing the shock. And then you've got the strategic resilience, which is basically able to absorb the shock, but also quickly change in a rapidly bounce back in a rapidly changing environment. So we have to assess these core process resiliences. We look at technology backups, for example, third-party resilience practices. And yeah, I think basically what I was trying to say is that risk maturity models and your business impact analysis that comes in very, very handy to have a sense check of where you are on this planet with that space. All right. So now I'm going to enter into the second phase of the need for ERM, right? So I think the big question that comes in, I've been asked many a times, right, in my professional journey, that why do we need ERM? Whether you are looking at it's a new space, a new company, a startup, or even sometimes, okay, if you're a listed company, you've got no choice. You have to have line 2. But if you're unlisted, then you've got that option that to set up the company, or you don't set up the risk management function, or you can just have a de facto, maybe it's embedded within the line 1 oversight. So then this chart, I think I'm going to explain this to you a little bit, because on the first glance, I'll let you guys kind of absorb the information, but what this truly means, and I think this might be very, very interesting for you. Now, I have plotted some bubbles here, so I would call them nodes. Now, the bigger the bubble is, it's basically has a high risk influence, and the smaller the bubble is, it's got a very low risk influence. The thicker the lines are, that is basically means that it's got a high relative influence, and the lower the thinner the edges are, then basically it has a low relative influence. How this graph or the chart has come up is I've got some risk categories planned there. I've taken into account the most common risk categories, such as financial, operational, geopolitical, society, technology, and compliance. And then the idea that I'm trying to draw home or bring home is that you can't, in today's environment, actually no environment, you should look at risks in silos, because one of the traditional mistakes of risk management is, oh, it's only happening in manufacturing, or it's happening only in retail or in sales. I don't care about what happens in the marketing side of it, or in the finance side of it, or in the supply chain production side of it. So this is basically saying that you can't look at risks in silo. If you do that, then you're obviously setting yourself up for very difficult times. So this is showing the interconnectedness and the impact of the other risks. This is an illustrative cycle, but what I will tell you are some bullets here. I'll try to see if I can have the laser pointer. Yeah, okay. So look at this. So you've got economic downturn, let's say, as one of the risk apps, one of the financial risks categories. Look at that, how it impacts liquidity, and look at how it impacts debt market. So whenever there's an economic downturn, you will most likely see those two being the first hit. And then if you look at how whenever there's an economic downturn, you will have supply chain disruptions, which could then lead to transportation delays. And then look at the right side of the curve, where you have lack of economic opportunities or employment. That's pretty much kind of linking up all together. Another example is regulatory risks. So whenever you have an increase, and this is a big thing, because regulatory risk is a big bubble. So we see often that there's so many fines and penalties, and we read a lot of these in the news these days, even in the past years, of the heavy penalties that even the banking, the audit, you name it, right? It's mostly the named organizations that we get to hear are paying these fines. You see the interconnectedness in terms of the regulatory risk having an impact on the third party due diligence failure. And look at cyber attacks and look at data breach. I mean, it's very much interconnected in terms of if you have a data breach, very often cause of that cyber security attacks are often an element to that. And then you've got the adverse outcome of AI technologies. Look at that. I mean, it could be a manipulative impact from the cyber side to that. And then false information. We all know in today's day and age how much misinformation and or fake information is being floating. So again, I think all these things are all impacting everything around us. You look at fake information affecting the health safety breach, for example. It impacts your litigation. There could be litigation penalties. So this chart was basically to help you guys understand how interconnected the risks are in today's world. Next up. This one is an interesting one because I actually attended a World Economic Forum's top global risks that came up, and I came up. Basically, this one shows you the top risks that are there from a short-term perspective to a long-term perspective, from 2 years to 10 years. I wouldn't go into the details. You can read it on screen, hopefully, but you can see right at the top in the 2 years short-term cycle, you've got misinformation. That's basically the false information that is ranking number 1. And then you look at 10 years and you see kind of weather events happening there. You've got pollution and somewhere in there, but you've got cyber espionage. You've got many other things. I mean, in fact, on the short term, you see the societal polarization happening. The cyber espionage is number 5 in there. It's dropped down a few points in number 9, but it's still very, very high because we are looking at top risks across. I think they were rated, can't remember the exact number, but it'll be around at least 30 to 50 risks. So these are your top 10, 1 percentile in a way. On the right-hand side of the screen, what I've done is I've actually made this, tried to show the audience here today the differences in the risks, the top risks that affect the Southeast Asian region. So I've taken into account Singapore, Hong Kong, Vietnam, and India. A few interesting things I noted here is that you see, so the blue one is economic risk. The green one is your environmental risk. On the blue side, you see labor. Labor is the number 1 risk right now in labor shortage, the number 1 risk right now in Singapore. It is the number 2 risk in Hong Kong and is being repeated across all the regions as rating at number 4 and number 5. It drops off to the lower quadrant on as a 4th and 5th ranking risk, but it's been reflecting across all the 4 countries, and we are talking about 2 very strong emerging markets, and then pretty much, I would say, developed markets around here in the Southeast Asia on Singapore and Hong Kong side. On the economic downturn side, you can see that how that is playing a part. You're already seeing the impacts in terms of cost reductions and optimizations, so recessions and stagnations. That's number 2. That's the second top 2 risk ranking in Singapore, followed by that's actually number 1 in Hong Kong. So that's pretty scary in the sense that how the risk man, the CFOs, and this was done by a survey, obviously, but this is their perception of how that looks like. It's number 2 in Vietnam as well. But the good thing, I don't see that in India. So India must be doing a lot of things right to not have this fear in there. Now, on the bottom of the screen, I show you something interesting is that in Vietnam and between India, surprisingly, I find water supply shortage as the number 1 risk rating by so many CFOs and the C-suites who have ranked this, and it's number 5 in Vietnam. So that is something which we need to be cognizant of, is to take care of our mother nature so that we make sure that there is enough water supplies and clean water going through to everyone, reaching our homes. Look at number 2 there. It's the misinformation and the disinformation. So that really comes out. I think I haven't seen this one across the 3 other countries. So definitely a lot of false and fake information running in there. So I think something to take note of if you're in your operating wherever you're operating in your business scale. Pollution, I think that's number 4. That's also something we need to. I know we all know about the pollution levels back in India and how it affects health. So yeah, I think those are the things that kind of surprisingly come up. Some not so surprisingly, but some of them I expect. I was quite actually happy to see the labor shortage is on the lower side, but there's also no economic downturn risk. And guess what? I forgot to mention. So there's no so look at Singapore. You've got inflation, you've got cyber insecurity as your number 3 and number 4, but you don't see those risks at all in India. In fact, it's inflation is there in Singapore and as well as in Vietnam, but that's not a risk in Hong Kong. So I wanted to just sort of thought I'll mention that here. All right, so I hope I've been able to kind of lay out the basic elements in terms of why does it now matter, right? I hope I've been able to reach that stage. So when you look at this slide, this is basically I've broken this down into 5 elements, talking about strategic to structured to strategic to process, compliance, and value. But essentially, really, what it means is when you look at structure, you have to, as a risk manager, this is why it's more important. Is again, it kills the silo vision. You don't look at it from a narrow lens. You actually look at it from a holistic lenses. You are able to have a very structured and a proactive approach if you're doing ERM for your company and doing it effectively. On the strategic side. Needless to say that you need to have alignment with the strategic objectives by ensuring that the risk management efforts are integrated into the organization's goals and objectives. That is a must, which will then actually enable you to have enable the management to make better risk-informed decisions. On the process side, I think I mentioned already that you prevent siloed approach. You have to have the interrelated enterprise-wide view of the risks. Without that, can't really do much. So when you do that, you enhance your operational excellence. On the compliance side, it really helps us to stay on course. You can avoid unpleasant surprises and penalties that come your way. So it assists the organization to remain compliant with relevant laws, regulations, just being agile and prepared. I think that's one of the things why we need this. And lastly, the value. I think when you look at it, it protects. Yes, it protects our value and it minimizes our loss. I think that's a key thing. But again, when I say this, I'm also thinking that it actually also maximizes opportunity, right? Very often, as risk managers, we don't highlight that. I think that needs to be somewhere told subtly to your decision makers that yes, this is required because you're trying to cut down your balance sheet and your P&L losses. But then, hey, you also can have a gain, and then you can maximize opportunity that way. So yeah, I think embedding risk management really into the corporate culture is the key to. I feel is the key to why it matters more than ever. So I think we are on the we are at it's what time is it? I mean, I'm 27 minutes into the conversation. We want to have a poll here. Can I request Dipendra to run past the poll questions? And I'm going to just go back, swap my presenting mode, and let him run the poll. Dipendra, if you can go ahead and present the poll, please. Thanks. Question.
Sir, we have shared the first poll.
Okay. All right. I'm looking at it now. So thanks for I think the first poll, the question that I had was, I think I don't see them answered yet though. I don't think it's answered yet though. So it is to do with, I think, what are your biggest risk concerns today? I think is that the one that I had for slide 10? Dipendra, just give me a minute. I'll kind of just make sure that I'm reading the right thing. I don't want to confuse everyone here. Yeah, so I think the first question I had, I think people haven't really submitted this. So if I can request everyone to go to the chat, Dipendra, if you can help me on that, please. So that question is posted. Everyone needs to just go and submit their vote. I don't see that there. So what are your biggest risk concerns today So is it compliance, is it operational, or is it strategic? If you guys can just take about 30 to 45 seconds to answer that, that'll be great. Okay, let me. Dibindu, I think you should be able to see the results on your side, or is it on my side that I will be able to see?
Yes, you can also see, sir.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can see question. People are already kind of doing that. It's only one response, I'm sure. How many of us are on the call today?
65 as of
65. Okay, I need more participants participating, fellow CMA members. Can you please answer the question? If you're on the phone, it's or on the call, you just should be able to really quickly click one of these responses. So this is just for me to get an understanding, right, on how the concern. What is your biggest concerns, right, in terms of the categories that I've set in here. Can I please request people to start polling, because I don't want to waste too much time on that. Okay, I mean, I don't see anyone responding, so maybe I'll just move on. Okay, all right, we'll move on to the next bit, which is really to redesign the risk strategy. So in here, I'm trying to align the risk strategy setting in the sense that of how you would gonna go ahead doing this, right? So the first and foremost step that we all need to do is aligning with the strategic goals. So we have to understand the company's mission, the vision, the goals, and then kind of have a customized approach to having our own risk strategy, aligning that along with the risk tolerance levels. I think that's quite critical to understand. Next up is the risk appetite and the tolerance. So I think we're going to talk about this in a bit of detail in the next slide. But this is really determining the total amount of risk exposures that as an organization we are willing to accept, and really define that the tolerance levels. Now, establishing clear ownership of the risk appetite and tolerance is quite essential when developing an organization's risk strategy, because it shapes the overall risk philosophy. Risk-taking ability, we all know, differs from across at all levels, and they're all guided by the risk philosophy, as I was saying. For instance, typically, a head of an organization like a CTO who is operating with a broader strategic outlook, he has a higher risk appetite than somebody who is junior in the ranks or a line function. Is likely to be more conservative with a lower risk tolerance. So recognizing this differences is key to aligning your risk decisions when with the organizational objectives. So I think I just wanted to mention that. And then you're looking at the risk governance structure. So when you're looking at the governance structure, you need to be very clear on how you set those responsibilities. Clear definition of roles and responsibilities need to be there. You have to set responsibilities for board and the reporting lines, and then have a right channel of escalation that in place. So the next part of that, what comes up as a result of that, as an outcome of that, is your framework. So again, when you're looking at a framework, it is it is like you have to, there are standards, right? So you have to just kind of look at the best possible applicable framework to choose from or select from. So select what suits you best, but within that you kind of define the risk category in your assessment scales and yeah, and impact and velocity of that. The most important thing on this slide is the obtaining the leadership support. I think that is the real key thing. I think from my perspective, from my experiences, it is the make or break thing, because if you don't, it really sets the tone from the top. So the commitment, you need to have you need to identify. In the earlier slide, I talked about stakeholder analysis or identifying them, right? So this is where it really comes in very, very handy. You need to have the leadership. You need to understand how to manage the stakeholders, and you need to also have the influencing ability to make sure that your point is put across. So therefore, you get full commitment from that. And finally, when you have that, you then formulate your risk response based on the risk appetite and the tolerance that you have built in, and depending on what organization or risk culture that you have. So the most impactful strategies are those that align on how the business thinks, behaves, and evaluates information. So that is really the take home that I wanted to share with you. Now obviously clear ownership also sometimes supports the risk philosophy, the risk-taking culture of the organization, and obviously after careful scrutiny, the organization may determine that they're actually able to take more risks than earlier perceived in pursuit of their objectives. So during this initial phase of today's topic, today's webinar, the topics that we are addressing on are really in the initial phase of ERM, which is why I didn't want to jump onto the risk implementation process, because that's a bit more advanced, the next stage of it. But here we're talking about really how do we set our foundations. So from that perspective, this is the initial phase. The priority is to understand the organization's attitude towards uncertainty, so that you can take the right approach and you can craft that approach to the overall perspective on taking and managing that risk. So that is really what it is, and I think in terms of the like, as I said, pay good attention to that, obtain leadership support, because I keep saying the goal is to really obtain that commitment from the leaders for the purpose, the scope, the accountability of it, and I think what do you need? You need resources. So I think it's also to make sure that you have resources to drive this this entire strategy, because you on your own can't really drive it unless you're a small shop. So clear, compelling, concise messaging, really helps to gain the attention from the leadership, to get the management buy-in. In other words, so yeah, that's what I would want to say in this slide. On this one, it's a lot of words, but I think this picture says it all. So you can read it faster than I'll say, but what is really is trying to say that it's trying to set your capacity. How much risk can you really take, and then the total amount. What's your risk appetite, and then setting those variations in between, which is really how much can you tolerate. Yeah, is a 5% loss okay for you? Is a 10% loss okay too much for you? Or is something more is what your risk appetite really is. So this sets the foundations in terms of it's a bit more granular. It is really focusing on within a certain business unit or the specific risk category. And the last bit is really where you want to be, right? So what's your desired level of risk? This is how much you can take a 15% sort of exposure, but ideally you want to take a 10% exposure. So that's your risk target. I think these are all things that are beyond, honestly, a risk manager's pay grade, if I may be very honest with you. But at the end of the day, we are the facilitators. We have to have front seat on the table to really drive those discussions forward. I think in terms of what you see on the left hand side of the screen, so I'm talking about stuff like here on this side. So on this side of the slide, it is imperative for us as risk managers to really make sure that your risk appetite is well understood and is aligned. I cannot emphasize more than this two words. It has to be well understood and aligned. Otherwise, it just won't work. So I think as risk managers, that's a key lessons learned from me in my experience so far, and that I need to get these two things at least correct. The other thing I'll say that as clear as it can be, the risk appetite statements sets up for success. It's an effective way to assess risks and develop your treatment plans, but you need to have clear risk appetite statements, and it has to be set by the leadership. Don't go and do it. It's not your, like, as risk managers, it's not our responsibility. It has to come from the board, preferably, but by the leaders. And then you have to define some metrics around the key metrics around it to ensure that risks are flagged early and you're playing a proactive approach rather than reactive. And that's how you reduce exposures when the risk kind of exceeds the tolerance. I hope I'm not like the language that I'm using. Hopefully you're able to resonate that. Because if you, like I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to stop me at any stage and or clarify if I'm going too fast, then I can slow it down as well. Some of the common challenges I have faced when I've seen risk appetite statements earlier is that, like I said, if it's not clear, then no one. If you're reading it if you're reading a few times, you're still not getting it, then trust me, others will not get it as well. So it can't be vague. I think one of the challenges is it's a vague terminology. Ensuring consistency with the organization goals. I think that's the first thing I said about alignment, right? Then you're achieving consensus amongst so make sure that you take everyone along with you, all the relevant stakeholders. Goes back to identifying the stakeholder management, balancing the qualitative and the quantitative side of measures when you're doing a risk appetite statement. And finally, adapting to the continuous changes. So I think defining risk appetite is tricky. I know it's tricky because it really plays, but once you set it, it really plays a very critical role in shaping how an organization measures and manages risk taking. It really sets up the behavior. For example, I can think of, where you have some natural like risks which are related to natural disasters, health, safety, environment, or operational disruptions. Organizations are using the probability impact matrix because they want to sort of quantify, they want to establish some acceptable boundaries, which directly will influence their decision to take insurance coverage and pay the deductible. So which is the end goal and the outcome. So to reduce the balance sheet loss of the P&L downside. For strategic based initiatives, I think risk tolerance may be tied to some financial metrics. It could be, like I said in the example, 5%. How much of a revenue loss are you ready to take based on you losing a customer or you losing a vendor? The capital at risk or the balance sheet impact. So, for instance, the company might adopt a policy to advance with a strategic project only if they know the probability or the expected probability of the loss if it remains below a specified percentage. So it goes back to the tolerance and my target and what is really my appetite. So it comes down to that. On the right hand side of the screen, I've tried to sort of give two examples here of risk appetite statement. So really what it says is that one of the examples, I'll just read that out. So our risk appetite is generally low across most categories. We prioritize the financial stability and client satisfaction with minimal tolerance for operational disruption. So while we are open to exploring new market opportunities, we prefer low risk ventures that align closely with our core competencies. So this kind of risk statement, when a risk manager is reading, you know that you're operating in a very low risk tolerance environment. So that means they don't have a lot of risk appetite. So if you present, in your risk mitigation, why this is important, I don't want to jump the boat a little bit further, but I'm just mentioning this because it's important for, I think, to connect the dots is if there are some risk mitigation actions that you're proposing today, make sure you don't propose something which is beyond what they can actually take on. So sometimes it's understanding the risk appetite of the company, that it's low and it can only do so much. So what instead I do is that I try to understand their current control environment, and then I will try to assess improvements within those current control environment so that the risks can actually reduce. And in the future, if it remains low for an elevated amount of time, for a considerable amount of time, let's say 2 or 3 quarters or 1 year, that's the time you can actually revisit that, and you can say actually your risk has been pretty low for most of the time. It is below the risk appetite level. So on this particular business objective, I think you can take a little bit of more risk, which is what in this case it's they're trying to explore a new market, but they prefer low risk ventures. So it could be it could be a new space or a new I would say a tool that they're operating in, maybe a change of ERP. They have been hesitating to do that because they just don't know the disruption of it. So if it's remained low for a long time, maybe that's a conversation one might have on the table. The other side of it, people who are from banking side, I think settlement risk. So failure to settle with merchants due to lack of availability of funds as a result of systemic bank failure. This is a risk that I could think of. And the risk appetite is that we have no appetite for the failure to settle with merchants. Obviously, I think it's the same for us as well. You just cannot afford to have a failure of payments with your merchants or with your vendors, because it's obviously you can have a lot more reputational penalties, litigations, and who knows what. Like you can have lawsuits coming in because you've actually breached a contract. So it is really the right kind of risk appetite that you should not have any appetite. That's it. Another example I can think of is if you're operating if somebody here is runs the logistics or warehouse or the factory, you would know that you cannot, you're as a manager or as a lead or as a section head, as a sector head, you know that your risk tolerance level for health safety, a worker falling from a height and fatality is really quite bad. So you cannot have a tolerance level. You have a zero tolerance level for that because it's just not setting the right example. If companies generally will have a very low risk. I mean, almost a zero tolerance on that. Actually, not almost, will have a zero tolerance on that, on fatalities and loss time incentives. So this is what I've seen in my past lives. This is the real case for most of my clients that I've come and I've worked with. They generally have a very low risk tolerance on that. Another one is on the director's duties. So I'm sure a lot of the people on the call today would be either current directors or ex-directors, and they have the director's fiduciary duties that come in. So again, a non-compliance of a director duty is something which needs to be zero tolerance, because you really don't know once you non-comply what could be the implications of it. I'm not saying, at least that should be the risk appetite statement. That means you have a very low risk appetite. But if you're in the financial institution space, or if you're in a building safety kind of, you're a director in a mall and running a retail operation, it is quite risky for a director to say that if there's some kind of unsocial activities happening, and God forbid if people were to you have some kind of ungodly things happening there, then that will really fall on the security management, and a lot of regulators and the law enforcement agencies would come in, and you would be the first responder to kind of be answering a lot of questions. So which is why I'm saying the legal impact, the litigations can run into, in Indian rupee terms, it can run into a lot of rupee and the financial impact, and obviously on this side it could also cause imprisonment as well. So that's the risk appetite statement. I think at this stage, I just want to bring one more point, is that on the risk appetite and tolerance. So if you're an early stage company, if you're like a startup, you obviously have a lot more risk appetite because you're on a growth phase. You're willing to accept much more greater volatility than a large company. So if you're a large, mature organization, you often are bounded by the expectations and the heavy expectations of the shareholders. So you're generally very risk averse, and you have low risk appetite as a result of that, because you have to have stable earnings and churn that dividends out back to your shareholders. So on this, I think we are at slide 13. I think we can continue. I think the poll is a little later. All right, this is my final section on the risk governance, culture and governance. I will try to wrap it up. This one is actually my, it's a long topic, but I'll try to wrap up in the next 15 minutes and let's see how it goes. I'll try to run a little faster because I think short of time. So in terms of fostering a culture of risk awareness, this is really the take home for that I want to kind of show you here. So I won't read everything, but what I want you to see here on screen is that there's the board actually sets a culture and that drives the organization behavior. So you have, as a risk manager, your job is to make sure, or my job is to make sure that I establish a clear communication channel to encourage reporting, and people should not be afraid of reporting, incidents and without fear of retaliation. So it should be a proactive approach. Next comes that this doesn't come on its own. It is channeled or fueled by a lot of training that happens. So regular training sessions to all employees, risk champions, and all the dependencies that you need to train to raise awareness across the firm. Even if it's not a risk, a person on risk, you need to raise awareness because of incidents can happen, and they are the closest on the ground, the people on the ground. So they need to be cognizant of that. And then the incident reporting. I think this is a very critical piece as a risk manager. We need to manage, we manage incidents across on a regular basis. So the logging of the incident, recording the essentials of when did it happen, date, time, location, the diagnosis of it, and then coming up with a post-incident review. I think these are the foundational pillars of fostering a good risk culture. In terms of the governance, I think I just wanted to open with the definition. I just want to open the in terms of ask a question that have you ever actually wondered who is really in charge of managing risks in your organization? If you're thinking it's a risk manager, the answer is not. So I'm sure you have the right answer when you think of management. But yes, management is senior, but it's actually senior management, and I would put a added layer on the board. The board oversight is also very critical on this. So on this slide, I will you can read the definition of risk governance. It's basically a set of policies, frameworks, roles, and things like that. The idea, the outcome is to provide structure and oversight. But what you see here is that there are I think I missed. I'll just complete this slide and I'll go back because I missed the polling question. So on this one, it really shows you the two very popular common risk management frameworks that are used globally. So ISO 31000 is the most common global standard, and then you've got the COSO ERM framework, which is not just risk, but it talks about control, environment, and as well as it's sometimes used in the audit world. So I think let me go back one slide just to make sure that the poll questions are in, and I would appreciate if people can really participate on this. Over to you, Dipendu, to please run the question, and we can wrap within 30 seconds, hopefully. I would need support on this, please. So to what extent is risk awareness integrated into your day-to-day decision making? It's a very simple question. I just need some responses in there to see that you're not tired of listening to me. Yeah. I'll give my voice a little rest while I see that. Dipendu, are you on? Can you please help to ensure that there's some traction? I can't see people, so I'm not able to.
Yes, we have shared, sir. We have shared the poll questions. I think responses are awaited.
Okay. Maybe in the interest of time, may I ask our president and vice president and chairman to maybe have this answer, so I at least have some response to see where this is, how people are perceiving this to be. And Dipendu, if I'm not wrong, the majority of the audience here today are from the from the industry, right? So they should be managing sort of at least in the management space or risk management side. Am I right?
Yes, yes, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I don't see much of response, so maybe I'll just skip the questions. Maybe I move on. So just give me a minute. I'll move to the presentation mode. Okay. So yeah, I'll move to the next slide. Okay, in terms of this one here, so this is really the governance, right? So in terms of governance, I think I've tried to enlist here some of the key objectives that are relevant for to be there in terms of what drives governance. So again, it's broken down into strategy, structure, process, rewards, and people. So aligning strategy, I've mentioned this a few times now. So aligning the risk strategy with the business, the structure, which is managing the risks effectively across the structure, but clearly having defined responsibilities and roles. And then you got the processes there. So you obviously, if you have robust processes, you can enable informed decision making. You can make sure that your compliance is there and timely reported. In terms of rewards, I think this is something which is very critical. Rewards, I would say, rewarding proactive risk management is a powerful way of spreading that, building a risk-aware culture. Because recognition programs, like a few examples I can think of is recognition programs through public acknowledgement or in terms of team meetings to create team meetings, create a risk champion. I mean, awarding a risk champion of the month, identifying risk-related behaviors in appraisals, and just incentivizing people, saying that okay, you've done, like sometimes you can give them a bonus if you want to, but really helping them, giving some kind of accolades along the way, so that the reward, the risk owners, they really get appreciated and it doesn't fall into deaf ears. So rewarding risk owners through incentives. And finally, the people. I think that's the most important link of having governance structure, because that's the only way you can actually foster a risk-aware culture, and then you can protect your shareholder value. Okay, in terms of why does governance matter? So something similar to why does ERM matter? So in terms of governance here, I mentioned risk governance, but generally I would say any governance, right? So why is it important? And I think it's a no-brainer. Like you want the management and the decision makers on the board to not feel surprised. So they would hate surprises, right? So prevent unpleasant surprises is what I should say, from crisis and reputational damage. And then it obviously drives better decisions. You kind of, that way you build on the resilience of the company. It improves it enhances the trust. You make sure that people take full accountability and responsibility, who are defining for whom you're defining the roles. That is quite critical. And it enables, like I said, it enables organization to make informed decisions, balancing the risk and the reward. A strong risk governance framework allows organizations to adapt to changes. Transparency and accountability are key aspects of that. And then finally, you obviously have the balancing the risk reward analysis, right? So it ensures that risk managers are able to minimize the losses and protect the shareholder or the stakeholder value in this case. This is the 3 lines model. I think I won't go into the details of it, but what you can see here, that out of the 3 layers, we all know what the 3 layers are, because we are mostly from the audit and the governance background. In this scenario, the operational management, which is the business owners, are reporting to senior management. We all know that, but the risk management function, we also report to that. And the 3 lines of defense is a very commonly used framework. So the internal audit function then reports to the board. So I've just tried to outline that. I know people are probably aware of it, but I just wanted to bring that out to make sure that you understand that this is part of the governance structure as well. Now, in terms of core components that goes into the element of risk governance. So first thing that needs to go into the strategic document is your alignment. So you need to start with the point that your risk strategy is fully 100% aligned with the strategic goals and objectives of the company and defined risk appetite. The next part of that would be the structure. So you need to set up the proper governance. You need to already establish that because we've already spoken on it, right? On the board oversight, the risk committee, the owners and all that. And then that then translates into your process. So how do we identify, assess and evaluate the risks? What are the reporting and escalation channels? And then incident management protocols, what that would be. And while you're doing that, you also have to define, and this can get really tricky as a challenge, is to define a clear taxonomy of the risk and make sure that this is understood at the group level and at the local regional level. You can have nuances, but you have to make sure that at least the broader category of risks are the same across the group and should not be different. And final missing piece of this whole puzzle, the people. Now, business units, the roles and responsibilities, and I think I drove the point home here that everyone is responsible in the organization, has a responsibility to manage risks to some degree. So risk culture needs to be really embedded across the entire enterprise to make sure that risk management is a successful one and not just a compliance checklist box, right? So that is the impact of this. Typically, this is like a risk governance structure. This is what I have seen in, and some of them I've actually implemented that for my portfolio companies that I've worked with. So you start with the business unit. So all of these are risk owners. The right at the bottom of the screen, I will try to use the laser pointers. Right. So everyone here are actually the risk owners. They are the ones who really manage the risk and implement the controls and report. I sit on the side, or as risk managers, we sit on the side, and then we just drive that entire risk process. We conduct the assessment, we track the risk events. In terms of the business unit risk owners, they all report to the executive management, right? And then in other words, the executive management reports to the risk committee, who is in charge of monitoring the risk exposures in the firm. And then you've got the ERM kind of reports to the risk committee, but the risk committee then finally reports to the board of directors. As we all know, the board really has an oversight of that. So one of the poll questions I earlier asked was, who do you think is responsible? Actually, this group here is the one that provides the oversight, as well as they are the one who approve everything around it. So they are really the responsible party. Risk committee is really the final gatekeepers. It's like a body which gets together, discusses, monitors and questions, and then reports up to the board of directors. So that's the governance structure that I wanted to show. I think this would be my last slide. So I have tried to point out here is like a hybrid structure of a governance, and I think if you are, depending on whether you are a mature or I would say whether you're a mature organization or in an early stage or growing organization, a growth phase, accelerated phase, I would say a top-down and a bottom-up mixture is the best way to go about in terms of having a governance when you are setting up a governance structure. The entire reason I say that is because sometimes if you do it bottom-up, people are generally not very proactive, so you have to kind of always chase them and they have to be reactive. Whereas if you already have the tone from the top, if you know that the board has set clear boundaries and clear guidelines on this is how we want to run our company, we need to be more responsible for it, and this is how we will do it. Then that really helps the risk manager and the team so basically it runs it down, right? So if we have a strategic alignment right at the top, you can then bring the points and set the right culture. And the bottom up then really helps because as business owners, as frontline people, your back office functions, depending on if you're a bank or if you're a trader, generally the finance function and everyone around it will be responsible for the risk identification, the assessments, and the responses. So that way, I think this together, if this model really works well, then you have a robust risk management process, and you can be assured that you have a comprehensive way of a comprehensive approach to risk management, and that really fosters the risk culture at all levels. So with that, I will give my voice a little rest and over to Dipendu if you want to run the questions now. Thank you. Dipendu, over to you. I'm finished with my slides.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think we still to get a few questions. I think one question has come: how an organization can get ISO certificate, and what are the benefits?
Okay, sure. So I think in terms of ISO 31000, it is not mandated to get a so it is not ideally. I think the question is coming from the point of view of ISO 27001 or some of these ISO 9001 certifications. It is not a quality standard that you need to get certified on. It is more of a framework that is used widely for risk practitioners. So you don't have to have a certification on it. You can build your risk function based on that standard. And the benefits of what I was sharing in one of my slides is really to make sure that you can explain to the management the benefits in terms of protecting stakeholder values and minimizing losses and how you can maximize opportunities are really some of the benefits. And looking at risk from a holistic perspective, killing the siloed way of doing things, the interconnectedness slide that I was explaining, these are really some of the lessons and the reasons why you should be having a comprehensive approach to risk management.
Sir, I think in your presentation you have shared a lot of inputs about what are the benefits for the management and all the stakeholders.
Yeah.
For this ERM model.
Yeah.
So can you please explain how the government and the institute can benefit from this ERM aspects? Like how can we maximize the benefits from the welfare mechanism?
Right. So I think I think first and foremost, you have. So I'm just going to answer it from the perspective of from students coming in and joining the institute and the welfare practices that the institute has. I would approach it from the perspective of maybe not so much how a corporate would run, because the corporate has a different element to this in terms of managing the protecting the balance sheet and protecting the downside of it. But from the institute standpoint, I think if the institute has some kind of reputational issues that are out there in the market, some social media, allegations and some blame and shame happening, or blame and shame happening there, or the institute generally falls in the pecking order in terms of not able to manage their some of the key people who are in the leadership don't really behave in the right having the right ethical aspects. This could then really trigger a lot of reputational damages. So which is why ERM then kind of comes in for the team that if you have a risk team or if you have an in-house controls team to kind of assess that vulnerability, and how likely are those things going to happen and how quickly can they happen. So the velocity of it and how quickly and what is the impact of that would be very, very critical to understand. Also, alongside that, I would add just one more point is when you assess the vulnerability, I think it's also about thinking that what if is the thing, right? So what if something were to go wrong? How do I bounce back? What's my resilience plan? So I think a lot of the welfare things that the institute can learn from this is real life examples from the corporates. I mean, if you look at the federal government, some of the cases that have happened, or just looking at some of the allegations that come through to other well-known charities or fund houses or NGOs, and the kind of malign that they get hit back with, and the financial element to that. So as a principal or the chairman, as a board member, what is it that the law enforcement can come after? So really thinking from those lines, and then having your guardrails around it. So that is how ERM can help you.
Sir, I think, sir, in your presentation, you also covered the various aspects of governance, like 3 line of defense you have stated. So presently, we have seen that various organization is having a robust audit committee. So how do you feel that the CMAs or cost accountants can help the management to provide these internal safety measures by controlling the frauds or any other sort of embezzlements which may happen, which may mitigate or enhance the risk mechanism? How the CMS can help?
Right, I think it's a fantastic question. I'm very glad that this is being asked. So yes, I did share that 3-line model assessment. So the reason that so if you remember the slide, you've got the internal audit, which is basically a 3rd line of defense, which goes straight into the board audit committee. The CMAs, I think I'm going to talk about. So that's your profession. But in terms of, let's say, the role that one plays as a CMA, it could be a line function manager, which is you could be a 1st line of defense, or you could be a 2nd line of defense. So risk management, if you're a risk manager as a CMA, the role that you can play is specifically talking about frauds and embezzlements and how you can analyze that, is to look at, there's something called, I think I shared this, it's called a key risk indicator. So a key risk indicator is something which you build a little bit matured in a little bit matured assessment stage, where you, similar to a KPI, because KPI you're measuring the activities against the performance against the objective set and the outcome. The KRIs is just to say that it's just the other way around. So it's basically saying that what are the risks that can impede my of these objectives being achieved. So if you set the KRI data kind of tells you how vulnerable or how the risk, the increasing nature of the risks that are coming. But the other thing that one can do as a CMA is to analyze costs, is to analyze trends. So why I'm saying KRI is because it helps you to analyze trends. But let's say you don't have a KRI in place. Some of the things that you can do is to set some automation checks and balance, or just to set some checks and balances in place to monitor certain areas, high risk exposures of where things can go wrong. So generally in the space where money matters are there, where cash leaves and more than cash comes in, because frauds would generally be on the cash leaving side. So you're looking at treasury teams, or you're looking at your cashiers who are running depending on the organization and the industry, and keeping a real good control assessment, like segregations around there, analyzing costs, doing if you're in a controls function, you need to do other than control self-assessments, you need to also do, I would call it a risk and control self-assessments, RCSs, and do some validation checks. One can do it on a sample basis, or one can actually do, if you are a little bit advanced, you've got automated tools there, then you can call an exception. You can actually ask the AI tool to generate certain exception reports. Or if you're using an SAP FICO module, it can also throw up something like that. The advanced risk tools that are there, like some of them are Logic Gate and Risk Connect, and many are there in the marketplace. The more that the incidents are there, you can actually quantify the incidents. When I'm not talking about risks here, these are real incidents. You can actually quantify them in terms of how much impact it had. Not everything would be a financial impact, but some of them could be reputation, some of them could be non-financial or non-quantitative. But most likely, it paints the director or paints the management whenever they see a financial impact. That is where I think as CMAs, we need to have that lens, be cognizant of what my expenses are, and be watchful of, have that vigilance in there to make sure that your systems around there, your controls and your capturing of data, analyzing the data is critical. So that way the CMS can help, in addition to the audit committee or the auditors, to catch this upfront. So which is why I think proactiveness becomes very, very critical in terms of this role.
Right, sir. Sir, another question is that you have spoken about risk culture. Uh, what do you think Indian companies, since you are based in Singapore, you can tell the best practices which are followed by the best companies, because we know Singapore is known for their best practices. So how do you feel the Indian companies, since a lot of questions are stated, especially for the BSE top 100 companies, that there is a question of there is a risk culture we do not find in the annual reports, which is I think a novel idea of making the best practices. So how do you feel that companies can embrace such best practices?
Right. So, I mean, I'm trying to just answer. I'm trying to run my mind in terms of how to answer this in a more constructive way. Maybe I'll start with the fact that Singapore has a lot of we call it the MAS here, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, is the regulations that are there. So the regulators are pretty much like the RBI. The regulators are really chasing the banks and the FIs who have got everyone who's got a capital market license. You have to take these things very, very seriously, because if you don't, then you are straight away going under the penalties and investigations, which nobody really wants. So because of this fear of compliance, what has happened is over the years, it has turned into a proactive approach. So rather than being reactive, companies have started. So if you're a listed if you're a listed company in the Singapore Stock Exchange, then you have to have the board. I think in India it's similar as well. You have to have the board and risk committee member, nomination members, responsibilities, names, remuneration, all of that showed in. And as a result of that, you also have to show what efforts have you done to actively identify or proactively identify the risks that are there, and what are you doing about it, right? So you in the annual report, or in the I would say mostly in the annual reports, I get to see here that what actions have they taken. It could be simple things like I mean they have a sustainability chapter altogether, but within that they will say that I've actually implemented, this was a risk I saw, like talking about a vulnerability that they've assessed, and this was this was the control that the government, that the management put in place. I see this in the listed company space. On the private space, because you're not mandated so much, but you can, if you're listed, the same rules come in. Yeah, but if you're not listed, and therefore you're not mandated by the SGX, but the MAS comes after you because you have the compliance thing. If not, then you've got the financial regulators, which is the ACRA. So they've got the regulations in place to ask the questions. So the best examples I've seen is that it is not a highly litigious country, but it sets high standards of corporate governance. But corporate governance is only one aspect of it. I mean, when I say risk governance, it is a part of the corporate governance overall. So I would call it GRC, so governance, risk and compliance. If you're looking at that element, then a lot of for example, if you're a trading firm, if you're a banking organization, institution, or even somebody with a fund management license, you need to flag out risks that are or violations that are there for if you have outsourced a certain service to your offshoring partner, could be in India, could be anywhere else, and if there has been some kind of violations in there, it could be data breach, it could be some kind of fraud happening, or you're not able to have the access audit rights, or just outrightly failing a critical function. All these things are reported, which is why companies have a lot more focus on the controls and the governance function in addition to the risk management. But it is an evolving space. It is never saying that this is where they've reached at the curve and therefore everything is sort of, in terms of, I would say it's matured, but also there's room for improvement. So I think from whether it's audit report, I mean, like I said in the first opening salvo when I was saying this, you've got the internal audit reports to understand the business environment that you're operating in. So if you're in India and you want to bring in a change, if you're a listed company, I'm pretty sure that there are very stricter regulations in place also, which are there to question the risk and the risk committee and the nomination committee's oversight. One comes to also question the members, the chairpersons of the risk, the composition of the board members, which is why I said it's very important when you're defining the board members, or at least nomination, so that there's some justification. You can't have a board member or a risk committee board member who is, I mean, a board risk committee member who does not really understand or does not involve too much in terms of questioning the practices. So all these things come in. So you've got the due diligence in terms of the right experiences, qualifications, the right, more than qualifications, I think the experiences, and whether the right person for this kind of being a director and a non-executive director and all that. So I think all this put together, one needs to look at these things and then customize it according to the India context.
Right, sir. Sir, I think you have mentioned about incident reporting.
Yes.
Like I think whistleblower and other things. Sir, since AI is, I think the buzzword now, and everywhere we find artificial intelligence, we are resorting to. How do you feel that we should have a structured AI process so that such risk we get the flag on the risk areas, or early warning signal comes to the management, so that the top management can take action before actually anything happens?
Right. So I think on the AI side, so I mentioned a couple of systems names here, right? So I said about Logicate and Risk Connect. So these are actually already they have some kind of no code, easy to use tools with some kind of AI element, because they work with the Salesforce is their backend cloud service engine or cloud service platform. In terms of AI, how do you bring that in is your question in terms of risk management, day-to-day practice. Very simple. So I would say that whatever it is that you're doing, I give you an example that we have. So on the third-party risk assessment, if somebody is doing a third-party risk assessment for the first time or for a few months, new to this, if you just buy one of those tools that are there on, it's called there are many of them, but DDIQ is one. There are many AI tools that are there. All you need to do is you need to assess the vendors, the financials, their capabilities, any kind of red flags that are there, and the system will do that for you. All you need to do is get the management reports and get some of these financials. Some other data points that are critical to having the vendor onboarding when you're doing the vendor onboarding side of things, like any defaults, any breaches in the past, whoever they've dealt with, any major complaints, litigation. So all this kind of feeds in. This is at the vendor onboarding stage, third-party risk assessment. So it can help you before it happens. So if you don't have the AI tool, then if you do this, sort of assessment, but you don't catch it because you just missed out on a certain breach or something, But eventually, once you've onboarded, then you realize that, oh, there are kind of red flags around it, and I didn't escalate it. So AI can help you to do that pre-stage. The other thing is on the elements of data. So if you're a company like massive amounts of hyperscale data, then you have got no choice but to actually have an AI tool in place. So it throws out exceptions on whatever the metric that you set on. So it could be an operational metric such as number of near misses or number of operational disruptions. If you have a technology sort of a metric, it could be the number of times the downtime hours have happened and how much of that has affected your operational downtime or business disruption. So there are these tools. When you have that in place, it really helps the risk manager as well as the line function manager to see these things. And as a risk manager, I think it should be a common platform. So we kind of facilitated this conversation and then find a solution to say that this has happened. How do we find the right mitigations around it? So the risk treatments then can eventuate from there. So hopefully that is the way I think AI can really help. In the absence of AI, I mean, it's hard to avoid it because I think it's kind of almost given, and everyone should be using some kind of AI tool, if not for data analysis, at least for knowing, at least for one element of when you're either at the pre-stage or during stage. Post-stage, I think not much, because by then the incident has already happened. So it's more about at the pre, when you're onboarding something, a new product or something like that, or before a risk has actually turned into an incident, or even during. What happens is you don't know the incident has happened, but it's an ongoing process where you have you've taken the service of an AI tool and you're running those algorithms which it comes with, only to throw exceptions, and then you kind of spend your resources to manage that.
Right, sir. I think, sir, you have touched upon the role of the executive management and also the top management, like the board management. Both are having a equal role, or maybe, as you have mentioned, hybrid approach. I think since you have also touched upon the risk committee, or which is now a mandatory committee as per the maximum our SEBI has mandated from Indian perspective. What do you think that as operational management can highlight their concern to the risk management committee to mitigate various sort of maybe situations which are not to the best interest of the organization?
I did not understand the last part. So situations which are not in the best interest of the organization. Can you elaborate on this? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, means I wanted to highlight that like normally what happens, the board gets the information from the audit committee or any other maybe auditors or other stakeholders, external persons, those who are highlighting any malpractices happening. But from the operational aspect, like the persons, those who are dealing with the daily activities, how they can raise their concern to the risk committee that things are not in place, and we should have a certain control mechanism in place so that we can do compliance and also proper risk mitigating measures to protect the interest of the organization.
Understood. I think so. I think the fix is, I would say that firstly at the so you were mentioning about the top down and the bottom up. So on the bottom up approach, what is required, what is very critical is that yes, let's say that firstly I would go back to the culture. So the fact that the risk, not the risk, the employee at the staff level, they want to report the risks. They want to report some kind of malpractice or that they see. I think that's a great sign because it shows a sign of proactiveness. Now, once you see that happening, the first line of function should logically be straight to the. If you remember my the governance structure, it should be straight from business, from the line staff level, it should be to the operational manager or to their manager, line manager. The line manager is essentially, if the line manager happens to be the head of function, then that is a business owner. If not, if the person has got one more level up, and that is the final level before it reaches the organizational leadership, then that is really the business owner or the risk owner. That should be the escalation model. And then side by side, the risk manager, which is the ERM person like me, we should be in the CC. We should be in the copy, because the first function, line functions, should be the guys who should be assessing this and understanding that whether it's really a risk event or it's a malpractice or is it not, right? The quality of the risk being reported. And then if the answer to all this is yes, then that's a protocol that I follow, that I would go from the line manager level and I'll bring it to the risk committee. In fact, before I do that, I would assess that. I would make sure that this is logged into the risk register, and we evaluate it properly. We measure it against our risk appetite, and generally kind of see that it is something which is beyond our appetite and we should put a mitigation. If that's the case, then we report it straight to the committee. The committee then talks through this, monitors this, and then it's reported to the board level, board risk oversight level. But let's say it's an incident. We are talking about an incident here, because the malpractice is something. I can read it both ways. I'm just saying that the scenario that I just told you is from a risk angle, that it has not happened. A risk of malpractice can happen. But let's say you have an incident, a risk event that has happened. That follows a different scale. So that one would be straight up from whoever it is to it could be an employee, it could be a junior level staff, or it doesn't really matter. If it's an incident that has happened, which is like a malpractice kind of a thing, or ethical or unethical or whatever it is, it has to go straight based on the incident escalation protocols that are set, right? It goes back to my first few slides when I was talking about why is firstly the benefits of ERM is one, but I think it was firstly about setting the governance structure. So why the governance structure is so important? It goes back to that. So if you have the incident escalation protocol, that means it defines that beyond. I'm just going to give some random numbers so that to make some sense. Let's say the malpractice will bring you about a 10 lakh whatever loss, a financial loss, or it could be like the next level could be so this anything which is below 10 lakhs or around there, let's say it's a low zone. Anything which is like because let's say a company running in crores, right? So multi crores, thousands of crores. So for them, a 10 lakh is minuscule of it. Now, if it's going to 10 to 50 lakhs, then that's a number that one needs to take cognizance of, because it's a malpractice happening with that kind of number. So that goes into the medium category. And then anything which is above a crore, or if you can increase the numbers, but only 50 lakhs or 1 crore, at least like a point. So you have to have some kind of logic behind it, that I will put 5% of my revenue lines, or 1% of my operating cost, or whatever it is. Like you can have a percentage of a profit or a percentage of a cost to say this would be the maximum financial loss that I should have in my incident escalation. Based on that, what you've defined, a reputation could be one, a system downtime could be one, depending on like I cannot take in more than 4 hours disruption. I cannot take in more than 8 hours disruption, or something which is like more than 24 hours of system downtime, which is a disruption. So what should I do? At each stage, you define the incident escalations. You define the protocols. So it has to go from this level to this level to this level, and that is how in the example that you were telling me, that's how it will be triggered. So if it's an incident, yes, firstly, the triggering happens. If the incident, the line manager knows that, okay, this is actually something which is big, the initial aspect of it, the fact finding, the risk manager needs to come in, handle that incident. We need to, I think I mentioned about the incident date, what happened, a brief description of it, the date, the location, the time, who was involved, what caused it. I think the primary reason, what was the root cause, and then what actions were taken to reduce this thing. If it's a malpractice happening for a very long time, then also the same thing. Like what have you? I mean, the risk manager might not be having any actions because not risk manager, sorry, the line manager, because it might be too junior for him to put a thing. He just wants to bring it up. which is fine. In that case, what has happened, one cannot really say. But like what actions have you done to mitigate this or reduce the immediate impact? One can't have the answer to that immediately. But then ideas to escalate it, incident escalation must happen. It should be discussed at the risk committee at the right levels. And finally, the if it's very serious, then you have to have the whistleblower hotline, because I don't know if it's a fraud or what, right? So you have to have a whistleblower hotline, in which case you will have a different direction happening here. You will have a legal compliance and the risk manager comes in, a few senior suites will come in. So it really depends on the aspect of it. So I would say I would say that there are a few ways to look at it. But if I were to summarize it, from the junior most level to the line manager, if the line manager is the head, then that's great, because then that goes into the committee, at the committee level, the group discussion, and from there on, the lessons learned and all that. I would summarize it that way.
Thank you, sir. I think you have touched upon the maximum areas which I think any professional must know before he ventures to a full-fledged mechanism of risk mitigating measure through ERM. And the last question, which I think one of our member has written. So, you know, we are in a VUCA world. Everybody knows every day changes happen. So this business risk is something which is beyond any process-driven control. So how do you think that such mechanism, like you have made in your presentation also, that you have to have certain templates, certain processes which will help the organization to mitigate or safeguard themselves. So, but certain things which are beyond the uh, feature of the organization, how to mitigate them? Like COVID came, like this Russia crisis came.
Yeah,
We never thought of it.
Yeah.
So how you can ERM can help?
This is one of the best questions I think I'm getting. I think this is a great question. I can speak for this for many for many more minutes, but I think I'll try to summarize this, because this is really as a risk manager, this keeps your head spinning, and this keeps your head thinking, your mind thinking actively as to how can you. The first thing that comes to your mind is talking about COVID and all this, right? Is really operationally getting a massive disruption, and how can you ensure that you're able to service your clients, like running the business? How do you make sure people are getting paid and business is coming in, all of that? So a simple answer to this is that as a risk manager, and I think in this particular seminar or webinar, at this stage, I did not want to touch upon that because it's a bit more advanced stage, which is what I was hoping that in the futures in the future seminars or webinars we can talk about that risk process and really implementing a risk process. This today was more about just setting the ground and the foundations and the governance. How I do is, you're really talking about the unknowns, the ambiguities, right? So I do something which is called the emerging risk. So there are many emerging risk can. So what I mean by this is that it can be done in many ways. One can actually, again, the AI tool can come in here very, very handy. It can throw up a lot more the unknown volatiles. The World Economic Forum report, which I was just sharing, I mean, the slide that I had on, it has a lot of those vectors. So as a risk manager, you continuously have to look at market insights. You have to look at reports which are coming in from all these. Basically, a summary of that would be a market research and insights from the authorized authors, the publishers who publish such things. It really opens up your mind, and it tells you that the disinformation, misinformation, geopolitics, and all of that. The idea is to understand those risks that are out there. But most importantly, I think the thing is, which I mentioned in my slide, is that I need to think of the impact of these incidents impacting my business. Sometimes it may not. Sometimes it could be a Russian-Ukraine war. So just to give an example, I may not be the right example, but if I'm running a non-financial institution with no manufacturing I'm sorry, I'm running a non-financial institution. It's a manufacturing plant or a business, but I'm not in oil commodities and I don't buy anything. My trading partners are nothing to do with my supply chain. When I look at it, let me answer it in a different way. So basically, I do not have any exposure to Russia and Ukraine, and I don't have anything to do with, let's say, when if you're a financial institution, you might have some more exposures on credit, and if you're an oil and gas trader, then yes, you would have. But how I would see it, I would scan the supply chain disruption. So in a way, it's also the emerging risk. I would look at the supply chain disruptions. I would look at the where my businesses are, the locations. Of course, hopefully it is not in the trouble zones. And then how quickly the velocity of that coming. So I would have to envisage that sitting with the risk owners or the business owners and try to assess that first to see the real impact of this. And these are things that you will have. Again, it forms a part of the risk process. So you would actually sit down with your risk owners. I keep saying risk owners, actually the business owners who are the risk owners, and you would have a conversation with them, a discussion with them. Various models can be used. Remember, I talked about the pestle analysis. So pestle is precisely that. You're looking at the political, environmental, all of that, right? You're looking at a scan of whole thing. And then recent example is tariff. So COVID is a bit behind us, but if I look at tariff, I think first thing that we need to identify ourselves is, hey, I mean, this is something which is going to be there. We don't know how it's going to be, how badly it's going to impact me. So I would look at my entire supply chain, my vendors, customers, everyone around me, and then the vendors of that, if I have the knowledge and the information, and then look at the prices today, and then the disruptions when it happens. Not disruptions. I mean, in a way, the tariff when it happens, how much impact will it have on this? So is it a 10% rise? Is it a 15% rise? So my P&L, how much impact that would have? So all this put together, these are all unknowns, right? So I as a risk manager, a lot of analysis, critical thinking, quick thinking has to come to ensure that you've got some answers. You will never be accurate, 100% accurate, but you'll be about there. So I think one example I can think of is a CrowdStrike that happened, where there was a damage for a few hours on the cloud on the space. So you can't use Teams, you can't use a lot of the applications, and it was down. It disrupted business. So what do you do, right? I mean, those are 0-day vulnerabilities. You can't really. The only thing you can hope for is you've got a secondary system backup, or you've got some other platform which is not Microsoft Azure. You will look at some other. I mean, it's not always the case. Best case scenario. So what we did was it would be we have to run manually, or we have to kind of tell our stakeholders to manage the expectations. But at the same time, we do a lot of lessons learned from here. So we take these lessons learned, we log it down in our playbook, and then we kind of analyze and brainstorm the tomorrow's incident that might happen on these, keeping this ambiguity. So it's a lot more dynamic answer viewpoints I can give you, but broadly speaking, there's just so many some of this. I mean, geopolitical, if there is an impact of that which doesn't really impact India or your business, that you have set up, then you don't need to worry about it. But you need to assess that. Something happening in China may not be directly impacting you, but a weather event, like for example, a weather event in China may not be directly impacting you, but you've got to think of the indirect impact it can have. If your supply chain is dependent on China, and especially if the weather event affects China's ability to send you raw materials or supplies or stores or spares for the next 2 months or for the next 1 month, something like that. So that's how a risk manager needs to kind of look at the vulnerabilities.
Thank you, sir. I think we should close because we have touched 6, and I thank wholeheartedly the speaker for today, our Shakhar Basu sir, for his erudite presentation, and the topic which we had today, analyzing the business model and need for ERM, designing risk strategy, risk culture and governance. This is the first webinar which was taken by Basu sir. He would be taking a few sessions more based on his availability, and we request him, sir, the next presentation would be also on the same line, the part 2 of this, event, and I request all the members to participate in the second part of this ERM series which we will be conducting. And we thank our advisor CMA Partha Chaudhuri and our chairman CMA Chittaranjan Chattopadhyay for being present today and giving their speeches and their thoughts for today's webinar. We thank our president, vice president, and all the BFSI board members for their continuous support for the BFSI activities. We also thank our IT department, our CPT department, and other departments for helping today's webinar to do in this wonderful evening. We also thank our BFSI team members who has helped each other to materialize this event. And as always, we have another webinar coming up on 30th, and I request all the members to participate on that webinar also. We close today's session, and I thank you all for your participation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks Dipendu and the rest of us. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.